You're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
Hello, welcome to Fantasy Focus Football, presented by Wingstop. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by my two best friends, Mike Clay and Fields Yates, coming out of a very nice Christmas holiday, middle of the week weekend, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yesterday was very just jarring, right? It was like, oh, football
strange.
Games.
Yeah.
I'm so out of practice from 2 days off that I forgot to put the tweet out normally before the show. So sorry for getting on my phone right away.
Yeah, that's
I have a
because.
take.
Go ahead. Finish your thought first.
My take is that I felt like a West Coaster yesterday.
Okay.
It was awesome. So, like, we had two football games.
We did. Yeah.
And then last night, my wife and I watched the Nate Bargatze special on Netflix.
I watched that a couple nights ago, yeah.
Normally when I'm, like, after Thursday Night Football, it's like a race to bed, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or as you guys know, sometimes turn about the middle point of the third quarter for me, it's a race to bed. Not by design, but on the couch. I was like, wait. So I finished the games, and then we get to, like, sit down and, like, watch more stuff because we're not tired yet. That was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I did the same thing. Just watched some Christmas movies. But what I was going to say is, we come into the show here. You forgot to do things because, like, we're sitting here and what are we doing? Just like everyone else right now, just whining about our terrible losses in the playoffs. Our teams that go down. We all do it. They can't. We're not going to have a 100% win rate. You're going to have some good teams go down. So. Yeah, it hurts. It's painful. That was, of course, last week, though. Now we're on the championship week. So
the thing is that we didn't get enough of a grieving period.
No.
And grief is probably the wrong word,
right.
but it feels sometimes like that. Because, obviously the matchups end midnight Monday night, or at least it was possible that your semifinal or your whatever, second week of your first round of the playoffs was decided during Monday Night Football. And so you have Christmas Eve, and then you wake up on Christmas morning, and all of a sudden there's football again.
Two more games.
Right? And by the way, we had certainly plenty of fantasy-relevant players between those four teams playing yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
So it was quite a turnaround right there. Any highlights for you guys, like from the day itself that you particularly remember that were non-football related, like family related, or no?
Not specifically from Christmas Day, but on Christmas Eve, my son took his driver's test and passed it. So he officially has his driver's license. Very excited about that.
Uber. Let's go.
So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Uber? He's driving Uber now?
Well, I mean, Daniel's Uber.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he's your
he
Uber
can
now.
drive. Which is great.
Exactly.
This was one. I feel like Mike would have been proud of me yesterday. And this is a great parenting hack for those that either have or are expecting young children in their life in the near future. You guys know I have two children. One of them is almost 3. My 1-year-old didn't quite, she was happy to be a part of the celebration of opening up some gifts yesterday, but it wasn't like she could communicate what she wanted or say like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. Like, thank you so much for this silly putty, Daddy, or something like that. But my older one, I think that she certainly was excited by some of the items, but she was more excited to be actually opening them, right?
Okay.
And so she would open the gift and she would be like, oh my God, like a pony, fake pony, obviously, right? And so after I realized that she was so enthusiastic about whatever was in the wrapping paper, no matter what, she grabbed one and she opened it up, and somebody gave us something that was inside a box, a cardboard box. And so she opened it and I was like, oh, a box! She flipped out. She was like, yes, a box! This is awesome!
You'll be glad to know that, my girls are 8 and 10, still make that same joke. Oh, it's a box. Oh, yeah. But now they're just in on it and have fun.
Yeah. Oh, my God. She was so pumped.
Yeah, my girls got me a lot of, like, dad joke-related stuff, calendars and games and stuff. So a lot of new material.
A lot of new material.
Baby.
Love that.
All right. A lot of studying to do, off-season research to be ready for next year. So I'm in a good spot.
Getting ready for some FF now. Well, we got 2 more shows today, obviously today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to be here 4 days. Ooh. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, taking the first off on that Wednesday. So, and then we're getting close to closing up shop here on Fantasy Focus.
Yeah.
We're going to have an awards show a little bit later on in January, on January 14th.
That's right. Tuesday, January 14th.
Yep. So that'll be very
Liz
fun.
Loza may be here
Yeah,
for
she
it.
is.
Yep.
Yeah,
that'll be a good time. So
it's a big show.
We're going to make sure we close out strong for you. And part of the way we're going to do that is by covering the 2 Christmas Day games. Let's dive into Chiefs and Steelers, my friends. 2 games on Netflix. By the way, was there a more classic Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce performance all season long than what we saw yesterday?
Felt like that's probably the biggest throwback day of the year. Remember, Kelsey got hot for that 3-game stretch in the middle of the season where he had 20-plus fantasy points in back-to-back-to-back games. The only reason why I would argue that this one's a little bit different is, A, it's Christmas and everything felt a bit merrier, but B, during that time, that was when the Chiefs were still finding out what they had and really like leaning on whatever they had left, which was Travis Kelce. Of course, it's nearly the playoffs, so of course the Chiefs are now finding their footing. And when I watched them yesterday, Kelce had kind of a quiet start to that game, and you're like, well, it kind of makes sense. Like, now you've got Xavier Worthy, who we'll discuss in just a minute, who's cooking. And DeAndre Hopkins, who didn't cook yesterday, but still a part of the offense. And they've got 2 running backs now, not 1. And Justin Watson was hot early yesterday. Hollywood Brown is back. So Travis Kelce, that really was kind of a throwback performance. So 11 targets, 8 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. And congrats to Kelce as he now set the Chiefs' career receiving touchdown record. He bypassed Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah, that's a high bar to pass.
Yes, it is.
Some franchises would be like, all right, that's not a big deal. It's, whatever.
Yeah.
But for them, that is a
2
big
of
deal.
the 5 greatest tight ends probably ever in the same franchise.
Like
Pretty
Evan
impressive.
Ingram might already have that record for Jacksonville. Like, I don't
Catching strays.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is interesting. I think it's fair to be a little critical of the Chiefs at some points this season, saying they're probably not as good as their record. They just,
totally.
However, like, it's what's scary for the rest of the NFL is it's all coming together now. I mean, they're getting everyone back and getting into a groove. You mentioned Xavier Worthy kind of starting to break out over the last few weeks. Again, we'll get into that in a second. But with Hopkins there and Hollywood Brown now healthy, they brought in. And there was a note during the broadcast yesterday about how everyone can play their correct position now, like they played in the offseason with Marquise Brown back. Now Worthy could play his proper role. Of course, you have Kelce, Hopkins. Juju Smith-Schuster was second in snaps among the receivers yesterday.
Go figure.
Really 3 running backs with Piron making plays in the passing game. So that's scary because the Chiefs are actually better now than they were throughout most of the season.
Yeah, and Mahomes will be an interesting conversation. We're at the point now where if you're playing into Week 18, we'll obviously discuss players, but the Chiefs probably won't play their guys enough in Week 18 to merit consideration in the second week of a finals matchup. So we're kind of looking ahead now for Kansas City as well. It'll be a fascinating discourse this offseason with Patrick Mahomes and where we rank him amongst quarterbacks.
Yeah.
My early guess, and this is obviously not even far too early, this is like irresponsibly far too early, is that Patrick Mahomes will be somewhere between like quarterback 8 and 10.
Yeah,
That's my
I
guess
agree.
coming into the year. Not as much of a running threat as guys like Lamar and Josh and Jalen Hurts, et cetera. And also with the Chiefs, Kelsey's going to be a part of their offense next year, but he's not this massive big play threat like he was in the past. But yeah, a vintage performance yesterday from Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes finishes with 26.0 fantasy points, Kelce 22.4. Certainly his most in a while. I think he had gone 6 straight games without a receiving touchdown coming into yesterday.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to do much resting this week because then it would be basically 2 whole weeks off until the game. I can't imagine that. So I think if you're playing, of course, next week you're probably. Oh no, wait, we're going into Week 18 now. See, my calendar. I'm still imagining them playing like Sunday because it's only.
I was going to correct you, and then I was like, I know.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
My guess is.
So week. Yeah. So that's it. Like
Week 18
your championship. Yeah.
I'm guessing they probably will
not
play
starting
a quarter or so. Andy Reid has in the past played these guys in that final week when they have cinched their seed, whatever that seed was. So wouldn't be surprised there. I have a thought. Is Xavier Worthy this year's Rashee Rice?
Ooh. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because he's the guy I've been thinking about. Actually there's one league I'm in, a dynasty, where you can still trade going into so it's year round, and I was trying to make a move. The guy in the championship has Worthy, but I was trying to get him get AJ Brown in his hands, make a push for him, get a little younger with that team. Because I feel like I remember in the offseason I was like, just be careful because even if this guy's a superstar, we saw like Tyreek Hill, his first year it was kind of probably similar to Worthy's this year. He just scored a lot of touchdowns on a lot of yardage. And Worthy's kind of followed that trajectory. And I don't know if he'll ever be at that level, but Worthy looks like he's coming around. Like this guy's going to be a budding star. And I'm like, I feel like he's a guy I want to draft a lot next year. But also the guy I'm like, I don't want everyone to be in on him. So I'm kind of
want to pump it
where the bar is going to be. But you're right, with Rice there and then are you out on Kelce? Like I'm in the same mode as you. I'm already thinking the next year now. Like what is this going to look like? But Worthy, 9+ targets and 3 straight. That's
Three
huge
straight.
volume. That's huge volume in a Chiefs offense.
For what it's worth, those 3 games, 11 targets, and 9 targets, those were his three most targeted games of the season, right when fantasy managers needed him most.
And that was Rashee Rice last year, right? The volume took over. So I think that and actually I heard Matt Nagy, or a note reference about Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator, about how it reminds him so much, the recent ascent of Xavier Worthy, of Rashee Rice. I don't know if he was being specific and saying we decided to turn him into this yards after catch king, because what was a trait of Xavier Worthy? What was the trait that all we talked about prior to the draft?
Speed.
4.2, 140. He had 8 catches for 79 yards yesterday, so under 10 yards a catch. But with that kind of volume and an offense manufacturing touches for him, he certainly was terrific yesterday. But besides those 3, Mahomes, Kelsey, and Worthy, you kind of didn't get a lot from the Chiefs, and there were a couple on the borderline that you may have started.
Yeah, I think those 3, if we had to just put into a holiday theme, those 3 would have made the nice list for fantasy managers. If you have the naughty list, there are a handful of guys, basically both running backs, for what it's worth, made the naughty list, as they have been doing in spite of the fact that Kareem Hunt found the end zone. It just continues to be disappointment after disappointment for both Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, splitting time in this backfield. And then DeAndre Hopkins he kind of looked like he was the odd man out of all the pass catchers in this offense.
I'll just say this on the running backs, and Mike can attack the receivers if he has anything else to add. But because if you play in a 17-week league, you're now done with these Chiefs running backs.
Yep.
The hope when Isaiah Pacheco was starting to work his way back was, all right, he gets back, and it takes him a week or 2 to get acclimated to his normal role, and then he is what he was prior to the injury, or maybe 80% of it. It became pretty clear pretty quickly that was not going to be the case. So I don't know how many people were rolling the dice with Isaiah Pacheco in semifinals or finals matchups. Hopefully you weren't, because if you made it that far, you did it largely without the guy. So no doubt about what he'll be next season. But Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt are taking too much time away from each other to have any sort of meaningful fantasy impact.
Yeah, I agree. Kareem Hunt, 28 snaps, 20 for Pacheco, 10 for P. Ryan. So they just continue to use all 3 guys. I'm curious to see if Pacheco kind of gets unleashed in the playoffs, if they're kind of saving him a little bit. That's going to be really big to decide where we rank him next year. Because, again, once they're basically done, until the playoffs. So you're thinking about next year and what that's going to look like. Pacheco, Worthy, all fascinating players. As for the receivers, Hollywood Brown, we saw more snaps this week. Not a surprise, up to 43%. That was equal with DeAndre Hopkins, tied for 3rd on the team. Juju was 2nd, of course. Xavier Worthy was number 1. Watson further down the totem pole, although they used him a lot. That second drive, had the long catch, almost scored, and then he did score. They're just rotating these guys in, but it is nice to see a little bit of focus, a little bit of the distribution, at least going to one guy. Like we saw Rashee Rice early in the season. Worthy at least is a consistent, strong fantasy option. Again, though, that's over for now. At least, at least until you're playing DFS in the playoffs.
Well, we were wondering, too, what George Pickens was going to look like once he was able to come back, because he's missed the last couple of games. 7 targets, but this was just a really tough day, unfortunately, against these Chiefs.
He's a frustrating player, isn't he?
I'd say so, just because the raw talent is
clearly
unbelievably good.
Yeah, the fantasy player is frustrating. There are certain players that you almost feel obligated to play, right? And I was going to think of a good example, and the good example is probably George Pickens, right? Because it's on a good George Pickens day, 7, 105, and a touchdown is really hard to argue against, right? Just feels like George Pickens doesn't have a lot of average days. There's not a lot of 6 for 84s, it feels like, for George Pickens.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a lot of feast or famine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he did start to provide more consistently good, wide receiver 2, borderline 1 production when Russell Wilson took over. But, of course, he's been out for a while, then comes back and runs into this buzzsaw where they're getting blown out. So I'm with you. He's an interesting one, but if he comes back next year as a clear-cut one there and is going to see 28% of the targets, we're going to feel great about him because, again, when the ball's in the air going toward him, there's very few guys you need to be looking at that screen because the guy can catch anything. He's just unbelievably talented.
He had that 41-yard catch yesterday. It was just an awesome Russell Wilson threw a great ball, and the defender had no idea it was coming because Pickens just waited, and the last second was just
the ball was about to hit his helmet, and the hands come up. That was
really
impressive.
unreal.
He's been doing it all year.
And this team, they will have something to play for in Week 18. They're going to need some help, but they are not locked into a seat as of yet. So we'll talk about them more next week as well, I do believe. But just a thought looking ahead, Najee Harris is, I think, as many people know, going to be a free agent this year. I don't know if they'll do this because he's not a big guy and undrafted free agent, but I'd love to see Jalen Warren as a feature back.
Yeah, and they're maneuvering more of the work to him. He had 39 snaps in this game, 33 for Harris. So he outsnapped him again. I believe that was the case last week as well. So more work for Warren, as it should be. He's a good player. He can run. He run it well. We know how good he is in the passing game, and he probably would have had a larger role all season, except for he was so hurt the first half of the season. He just had a hard time. Actually, he tried to play, and Mike Tomlin's like, we got to shut him down. He's just not. He's not fully healthy right now.
Sorry, Daniel. Go ahead.
Would you have the same fear with Jalen Warren taking over as a full-time back as you do with someone like Chase Brown or someone like that? I just think of the body type of
that's exactly what I wonder if Pittsburgh would ever allow it to happen, because I just think that exactly what you're saying is is a 5'10", 200-pound back as equipped. I mean, Najee Harris is the antithesis, body type wise, from Jalen Warren. It's an interesting one, but just looking ahead, it will be fascinating.
It will be.
To be fair to Isaiah Pacheco, because he had a modest day yesterday, he did leave the game because of a rib injury.
So,
That's going to be an interesting one, Harris, because on one hand you're like, well, it kind of makes sense they tried it. He shouldn't command a lot of money. Maybe they bring him back, keep that committee together. But on the other hand, there's going to be teams out there look at Barkley and Henry and Mixon and Aaron Jones. Maybe we should go out and spend some money at running back. And he's a former first-round pick, so maybe. I don't know. Well, it's going to be an interesting one.
Speaking of teams that spent some money on running back and it really paid off for him this year, how about the Ravens just dominating the Houston Texans? Second game on Christmas Day. By the way, we got to give, I recognize I just started that with the running back conversation. Lamar Jackson, historic day.
He was awesome.
Most rushing yards ever in the history of the game for a quarterback, passing Michael Vick. Congratulations to Lamar Jackson. I mean, the dude just continues to be
Superstar.
amazing.
Vick has the chance to do the funniest thing ever, because Lamar passed him 6,110 yards for Lamar to 6,109 for Michael Vick. Michael Vick's social media team needs to have a graphic queued up highlighting Vick as the all-time leader, just in the unlikely event that in Week 18 Lamar plays a couple snaps and one of his first plays a negative 3-yard run.
Vick takes control.
Vick just posted and blasted, because keep in mind that record will stand for the entirety of the offseason if somehow Lamar loses 3 yards, because this is a regular season record. But Lamar is just brilliant. I mean, if I told you coming into the game, only going to throw the ball 15 times and only going to rush the ball 4 times, you'd say,
I might bench him.
Yeah, wait, what? But the efficiency is just off the charts. I was thinking about it yesterday, and I'm trying to get with the times here. So I'm on the TikTok now. Go find me at Field Yates on TikTok.
Love it,
put this on the talk, but I'm not talking best, not talking most accomplished, etc. Who's a harder player to defend than Lamar Jackson? And those 2 touchdowns, his first 2 touchdowns yesterday, sort of summed it up. So the first touchdown, he, I don't know, how much time did he buy in the pocket, out of the pocket, too, before he eventually hit Isaiah Likely? It was like a 7-second play before he threw the ball. And then on the second touchdown he scores, it's a 48-yard rushing touchdown, and it was the fastest that Lamar Jackson had ever run on a play in his career, at least in the next-gen stats era. And after the game, he was like, I was jogging.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? How do you defend this guy? You can't.
And you didn't even mention the play where he rolled out to the right, and I thought he was going to run, and he just little flick of a wrist and drops it in perfectly to Mark Andrews for a 60-yard catch or whatever it was.
67-yard run.
And I know Andrews broke a tackle, but the fact that you're like, here he goes, he's scrambling, and then he just flicks his wrist, and it was a perfect throw. I mean, it could not have been better. Right into his hands. The guy's unreal.
He's been unbelievable this season, not just as a passer, obviously, but as a runner again this year.
But just a final note there, it's wild how two different quarterbacks have locked down the MVP, though.
I know.
Man.
2 guys.
Discourse was hot yesterday on the streets, huh?
Hot. Oh, my. Just ridiculous.
I have a question. I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
And this is, I would argue that if I were a fan of the Bills or the Ravens, who cares if my quarterback wins the MVP this year? Josh has not yet won it. So maybe Bills fans feel a bit more passionately about it than Ravens fans do. But, Lamar's won it twice. He's clearly one of the greatest players ever. What, don't you want the energy to go to, let's win a Super Bowl? Shouldn't that be, more pressing right now? I saw it, and, it's Twitter, so this is how things work in this era. But, both these guys are amazing. I think there's a much bigger prize that they're playing for, which will be handed out in New Orleans in mid-February. So that would be my focus right now. But Lamar was unbelievable. Again, if you play in a 17-week finish, 17-week league, what a way for Lamar to finish. He will most likely finish as QB1 for the season. They are not locked into the 3 seed yet, Baltimore. But if Buffalo wins either of their last 2 games, they get the 2 seed. And Baltimore would need to lose and have Pittsburgh win in week 18 to not then be the 3rd seed. So they're likely going to be the 3rd seed, but depending on how the NFL sets up its schedule in week 18, because remember, we play games on Saturday and Sunday. There are all kinds of ways in which things can be impacted. So I want to stop short of guaranteeing play time for guys. But Lamar and Derrick Henry, who had 147 yards on the ground and 18 yards in the air, hardly played in the 4th quarter,
which is
3
crazy.
quarters of work for those guys to combine for, if my math is correct, was that 53.92 fantasy points.
Yeah, the fact that the Ravens carried the ball 43 times in this game and only threw the ball 15 was like, you know what? We just don't need to throw the football. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and that's part of it. Derrick Henry also set a Ravens rushing record for the most touchdowns by a running back for the Baltimore Ravens. So shout out to him.
He's getting real close to your 20 call
He's
for the
getting
beginning
quite
of the
close.
season. I think he needs 2 or 3 in the final game, which, again, we don't know if they'll play or not, but if they do, great call by you, obviously. That one's panned out. He's been amazing.
Win or lose, good call.
Yep.
Mike, does Mark Andrews make the nice list in spite of the fact that he only had 2 catches?
targets,
But he keeps doing things that breaks your model.
Yeah, he has never, it's just a unique year for him. He's never really been this dependent on touchdowns. He scored a decent number of touchdowns, but he's, it's been targets, catches, yardage where he's dominated. Just hasn't been the case this year. And part of it's that they haven't needed him. A lot of touchdowns have gone, of course, to Lamar and, of course, Derrick Henry, but he's the yardage they've had Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman's had a good season, Isaiah Likely's been involved, they've had all these other guys, but that's it. He's just a very unique year. And again, I've said this, I'm going to say this a lot, I'm sure, over the next week. Just a fascinating player in the offseason to figure out where we're going to locate him in the tight end rankings. Because the drop in playing time and target share is a little alarming.
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, and Ravens fans might be mad for even thinking about this idea. But, this is a very, very good team. What do very good teams often also carry as a reality? They're very expensive, right? And so we'll see if Andrews is even a Raven after this season, right? I mean, they've got an excellent prospect in the waiting, and Isaiah Likely, who also found the end zone yesterday. But
for sure.
Andrews has been red hot 5 straight games to finish 17-week league seasons with a touchdown. So efficient.
For the rest of the Ravens, I mean, even with Mark Andrews, to be honest, the most catches that a single Raven had yesterday was 2 with Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Derrick Henry. Basically just spread the ball around. Like I said, only 15 total pass attempts in this one, so Zay Flowers unfortunately didn't really deliver for you. Nico Collins, even though it felt like this was potentially going to be a smash spot for him with no Tank Dell, maybe open up even a few more targets.
And that's Raven secondary, too.
Yeah, it did not work out.
They finally are coming around. We were like, when is it going to happen? They are finally coming around defensively. Actually, we had no teams score no offensive points all season until, was it Monday?
Yeah.
Saints get shut out, and now Houston does it against Baltimore, scoring only 2 points. And believe it or not, I saw this, the Scorigami X account. This is not a Scorigami. This has happened twice before. So 31-2, very odd score.
Yeah, tough day, and tough finish, really, for Joe Mixon, by the way, down the stretch. I mean, just really unproductive. He had basically in the last 4 weeks of the season 3 duds, like 3 real duds. And
that's tough.
It's hard because, in some ways, like Joe Mixon very much overachieved this year, right? I mean, he was, and the Texans, by the way, locked into the 4 seed, so they don't have to play their guys in week 18. And they might be wise to sit some guys given all the injuries they have had. So we might be done with Joe Mixon during the regular season. But he was so great early on in the year that people just assumed that he would be great every game, every week, and that's a fair assumption to make, except for the fact that the efficiency dropped and the volume dropped and the touchdowns dropped. He was basically doing Derrick Henry things early on in the season and then hit a 4-game stretch that, frankly, may have been the difference between you winning and losing.
Yeah, you wonder if being, 29 with seeing 25 touches a game, isn't going to work out. He missed time early in the season. He came right back. They continued to do the same thing, and he just didn't hold up. Big fall off. And you mentioned Henry's role. Henry's only played 50% of the snaps all year, you know,
Yeah.
and whereas Mixon was pushing like 80% and handling, 5-6 targets on top of all those carries as well. And yeah, it caught up for sure.
Let's just talk for a second here. And it's obviously, we're threading the needle of like talking about wrap-up stuff and looking ahead while also trying to get you ready for this weekend, which begins in just a few moments here. But as we're talking about players and where you're going to rank them next year, who's going to be ranked higher in quarterback fantasy rankings going into 2025 based off your snap judgment? Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud? Go.
Ooh, I mean, my brain went to still Stroud, but I think it's close.
Isn't it close?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have C.J. Stroud on a dynasty league that we're in, and to be honest, he's sort of been the quarterback that's the odd man out. It's a super flex league, and I've been playing Bo Nix and Jordan Love over top of him in spite of the fact that, like, everything that you would have thought with C.J. Stroud, having a guy like Nico Collins and starting the season with Stephon Diggs and having Tank Dell, which didn't totally materialize like it did his rookie season, and still not really running the football, it's like, well, shoot, do I really have, I mentioned this earlier in the year, do I really have that superstar at the quarterback spot that I thought? Well, not in fantasy. Definitely not.
Yeah, they're probably both going to end up like mid to back end QB2s at best because like with Stroud I don't think he's going to turn it on as a runner at any point. And Bryce Young, I know he scrambled a little bit, but he is like the guy, like him and like say Matthew Stafford in terms of design runs since Young came into the league are almost identical. Like they have no design. He's not a part of the running game. So neither of them have much upside in that area. So you need elite passing numbers. That's what he said with Stroud all offseason. That's why I was like, I'm not feeling Stroud because he's going to need 40. He's going to need Joe Burrow like passing numbers this year to be a good QB1, and it hasn't happened. And again, do you expect that from Bryce Young? Probably not either next year.
I think
they have a lot of supporting cast work to do.
My favorite non-rushing fantasy quarterback is probably the guy that's QB7 right now.
Non-rushing fantasy quarterback.
I mean, Burrow.
Mike loves him. Mike's a big fan of this guy.
Wait,
he's QB7 for the season?
QB7 for the season.
For the season?
Yeah.
It's not Joe Burrow.
Jared Goff.
It's Jared Goff.
Yeah.
In spite of all the Jared Goff hate that happens on this show, he's barely a mid-round QB2.
He did like a lot of that's in a few games, right? Like he's had a lot of games outside the top 20 as well.
He has.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I just want to say this really quickly about Joe Mixon, and then I'll close the loop on this. First 9 games of the season, you mentioned how he was just like on a tear. Averaged 22.6 fantasy points.
Yeah.
Last 4 games of the year, when you needed it most in the playoffs, averaged 11.6.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, really tough. And we talk. And I always remember Adam Levitan, our buddy from Establish the Run. Him and Silva, the big dog, are great. The entire team they have there are awesome. And Adam's big on talking about this. That like, while you can't control it, like end of season production is more important than beginning season production. It just is.
It is,
right?
yeah.
Because there are ways to manipulate your roster early in the season that don't exist late in the season, i.e. trades, right? The waiver wire is much thinner this time of the year normally than the beginning of the season. And so, like Jared Goff, maybe he's been sort of all season, but he's been hot of late. He's an example of a guy that's peaked at the right time. There are some others that are in that category as well. But Mixon falling down late in the season has been really, really detrimental for your team. And just, tough finish for the Ravens yesterday.
Did you love having football on Christmas Day, or was it too much between all the family stuff that you needed to do and like all the presents and making sure everyone's fed? Was it too many things for you guys?
I would say I probably would prefer not maybe one game, but I think the way it's set up is okay because you have the whole morning clear until 1, so you get to do presents. And then the evening's clear too. So I thought it was fine.
I kind of liked it. My kids are so young that like going to the movies, which is like one of the few things that people do on Christmas because so many businesses are understandably closed, is not really in the cards for us right now. I watched half of the game with a child like sitting on top of me. That was fun.
You're good with it?
Yeah, I was good with it. How about you? What you think?
No, I liked it, but it was definitely one of those things where it's like, I just don't know if your family feels the same way that we feel. If it's like, hey, you know what? You're already watching football on Mondays and Thursdays and Sunday nights. Do we really need to watch football on Wednesday?
Well, we have an excuse. It's our job.
Yeah.
Like
we had to come well,
in
it's
today
easy
and
for us,
talk
but what
about it.
happens when you don't do this for a living?
I made up for it. I watched Happy Feet 3 times yesterday.
Okay,
so
all right.
And people are watching, people have always watched the NBA on Christmas anyway.
That's true. NBA on
It's not
Christmas
that different.
Day.
And also, it doesn't matter because it's not going away. There'll be Christmas football. I think there's a Christmas is it Tuesday?
Thursday next year. It goes
Yeah, no,
ahead
but
Monday.
in the that's going to be the interesting one.
Yes,
on
exactly.
Tuesday, 'cause I'm assuming that will be the end of the week,
Right, we'll
like
just
that would
push a
be
day.
end of week 16.
Correct.
As opposed, and then championships might start the next day or 2 days later.
Ooh, boy.
So it's going to be an interesting one, but they're not going away. They'll be on Christmas for
I would agree with
ever.
Mike's statement there.
All right, we got one more game right now that we're going to talk about, which is the Thursday Night Football preview. We're not done talking about football in
There's
the
a
middle
game
of the week.
today. It's today Thursday, guys. I don't even
Today
know.
is
Yes,
confirmed
it is.
Thursday.
It is
We have just
Thursday.
one more game.
Seahawks taking on the Bears. Mike Clay, I want to start with you when I ask you this question. DeAndre Swift,
Yeah.
under 10 fantasy points in 5 straight games.
Speaking
Are you
of Joe Mixon.
trusting him? That's honestly, because we saw DeAndre Swift have some nice games earlier this year, and then just down the stretch here, he is just created for managers.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Ranked, let's see, I have him at 22. Is that
That's after you pulled out the Wednesday.
I pulled out the Wednesday games. Yeah. Look, under 10 fantasy points in 5 straight and 6 of his last 7. So it's been worse than Joe Mixon, frankly, and that is despite the fact that he's played at least 69% of the snaps in 4 straight games, just 15 touches per game during that span. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 11. And another big part of it, the lack of touchdowns, obviously huge, but also passing game work has dropped.
Yeah.
So during his first 8 games, he had 5 targets 4 times. So half the time he was getting to 5 targets. He has done that 0 times in his last 7 games.
Wow.
So a big shift in both of those areas. Seattle mid-pack against running backs, so it's not like an especially good matchup here for Swift. So I think he's a viable flex option based on the volume, but certainly not a lineup lock anymore. He's just faded, and it hasn't been good. Roschon Johnson's actually missed time during this rough stretch. He's back now and healthy and will have a role, so I don't feel great about it.
Running back 22 on Thursday is more like running back 26, 27.
Yeah, something like that. We're
Throughout
talking
the rest of the week.
12-team league flex option.
Yeah.
I would agree on that one. Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
totally.
feel super great. Honestly, if there was someone I was going to start Field, I think that I'm still on the keep Keenan Allen going because for the last 5 games, he's been over 20 fantasy points. It seems like another one of those guys that has just turned it on at the right time.
Yeah, let's talk about a few factors that work in his favor, and I would say DJ Moore's to a degree as well. If we want to do it vis-a-vis each other, we can. But let's just speak about Keenan Allen for a second. He's going to play basically every snap, right?
Yep.
He and DJ Moore are the most likely players to be on the field if there are just 2 receivers on the field for Chicago. On top of that, this team, as we just talked about, is struggling to run the football. That bodes well for the wide receivers as well, especially in the red area where I know the end zone targets matter more, but the closer you get to the goal line.
He's had a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those are all both good as well for Keenan Allen. We've also seen a bit more work for Keenan Allen down the field. Not like, we're not talking like, peak Tyreek Hill down the field, but not as much like at or near the line of scrimmage stuff because that's all been going in the favor of DJ Moore. So, yeah, I'm in on Keenan Allen. If we were doing a Mike versus momentum segment today, this might be one of those topics that comes up. But it's not like Keenan Allen's gone over 20 points over the last, and what was it, 4 of the last 5 you said?
3 of the last 4.
3 of the last 4 with in those 4 games, 25 total targets. No, it's like elite volume has led to elite production.
Yeah, and it goes back to before Thomas Brown. He's starting to peak a little bit with Thomas Brown, but he's had a target share of at least 21% in 9 consecutive games. No duds in there at all in terms of target volume. He did have, actually, during that stretch, the only dud he had was the 49ers, who have been outstanding.
And that game got out of hand the moment it began.
Exactly right. But they were, Niners are fewest fantasy points of receivers now, I think, this season, or if not, very close
They're
to
very
it.
Close,
so he's been red hot and obviously a trusted target to Caleb Williams. I mean, if this was going on all year long, it'd be like, wow, Keenan Allen repeated as a top 5 fantasy receiver. It's been that good when they've been on, but there's just been too many duds mixed in. But I agree. I mean, there's been enough over the last month that you have to start this guy. Definitely a lineup block against Seattle.
I'm going to come at Mike real quickly just because you said 3 of the last 4. I said 4 of the last 5. It is 4 of the last 5.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Boom.
Well, I think I'm probably right as well then. I think they're both.
I mean, we're both. I mean,
Both
okay. I didn't
correct.
like that. I don't like you turning
Daniel's
it around.
more right than
I
Mike
have
is
4
right.
out of the last 5 on my sheet. I don't know why I said that. I don't know what I'm thinking of.
Question for you guys.
Yeah.
This might be a half-brain thought, but let me know if you guys buy this. In recent weeks, we have seen excellent Devontae Adams play. A couple weeks ago, we saw great Aaron Rodgers play. Not so good this past week, but Aaron Rodgers, a guy who's 40, has been, determined to play. He said he's going to play this week despite being on the injury report yesterday. Full participant in the estimation, but still. Keenan Allen, older guy. I wonder if there's a part of these players who understand that, in the case of Allen, he's going to be a free agent. In the case of Rodgers and Adams, both of them are contractually in a spot where they very easily could be free agents.
Yep.
Wonder if there's a part of these 3 guys, but maybe others that fall into this age category, who are saying, I want to go out there and ball the hell out. I want to prove, like, I've still got something left in the tank, right? Like, I don't know what kind of contract Keenan Allen will get this offseason, but, like, it's probably his last chance to make some pretty decent cash, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if, I'm not saying he wasn't trying, and these guys weren't trying earlier in the season, but in a time of the year, people might say, like, what's there left to play for? These guys might feel like there's a lot more to play for, right? I mean, it's only natural.
I don't blame the beginning of the season on Keenan Allen, like, not trying hard, like, right? Like, this Bears offense just took a while to be able to get humming the way that it was supposed to. But no,
But if you're worried about guys like this fading down the stretch, there might be like a motivation that you're not.
There's like a pride thing that like it's tough to quantify, but like I could absolutely see that. I would get that.
That's fair. Yeah.
I want to ask you about this. Ken Walker III didn't practice Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, has been officially ruled out for this game, Thursday Night Football, which means we're back on the Zach Charbonnet bandwagon.
Yeah, we are, baby.
How are we feeling about Zach Charbonnet, who has been really good at times when filling in for Ken Walker? Is he a lineup lock for you, Mike Clay?
Yeah, you said at times. How about every time? He's been money in the bank this season. 4 games without Walker this year, 19.5 touches and 23.9 fantasy points per game. Just to give you some context on that 23.9 per game, Saquon Barkley this year is averaging 22.4, a point and a half below that number, at least 13 fantasy points and a touchdown in all 4 games, 6 total touchdowns in the 4 games, at least 4 targets in all 4 games. So the floor here is so good. And on top of all of that, the matchup here is outstanding. Chicago, 3rd most yards, 4th most fantasy points, and 16 touchdowns to running backs this season. And if you're wondering if, like, well, maybe they're a little better lately. No, how about this? 18 plus fantasy points allowed to James Cook, Isaac Guerrero, and Jahmyr Gibbs over the last 3 games. So this is a great spot for Charbonnet. If he's been on your bench all year long or spot started at times, you know, again, we use this word a lot, but potential league winner here in Week 17. He could go off for 20-plus points this week and carry you to a title.
This is important to me, at least, and you guys let me know where you guys land on it. Obviously, you know, the most notable fantasy injury that we're monitoring this week is Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
The Eagles had only an estimated practice yesterday, so they weren't on the field, but Jalen Hurts was estimated as a DNP.
Yeah, and listed as concussion in hand as opposed to, like, A.J. Brown was listed as rested. Other guys were, so notable. Yeah.
So anyways, I do think we all agree there's some uncertainty surrounding Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
We won't know, but let's say we get another DNP today from Jalen Hurts. And I'm going to do this, I'm going to ask this question as we go through the Saturday games as well. Would you, before we have clarity on Jalen Hurts, play Geno Smith or Caleb Williams? Do you believe either of those guys represents enough? Okay, so you're bypassing.
No, I think I am going to take it as long as I can on Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
This is your championship, right? Like, the other team you're playing isn't bad. Yeah. That's a great team. You have to beat them. So I think I'd rather go for the win over, like, I'm just going to play it safe and try to be a contender in this game. Yep. You know, you got to play to win.
Yeah, I got that question from my good buddy. If anybody here follows sports in Boston, they know the incredible Dan Roachy. He and I were talking this morning, and he's in the same. He has Jalen Hurts, but shallow waivers had to grab as many quarterbacks as he could off, and he ended up with Caleb and Drake May, and so he's sort of sifting through options. So I wanted to keep serving the audience here, but I told him I would bypass Caleb. He could have a good week, but I would bypass Caleb tonight, string this thing along. We have clarity by Friday afternoon, then you may have to play Drake May.
Right.
But that's not a terrible option to the point that I would say, hey, like, I'd rather buy myself some extra time and be forced to play Drake May than playing Caleb Williams right away and then having Jalen Hurts also play on Sunday and missing out on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, but a good point by you right now at this second for people watching, because you might want to go out right now and look at waivers and have a backup option that plays Sunday.
Definitely.
Right now. Just make sure you consider that so you don't end up like, oh, no, I have to start, like, I don't know, Aiden O'Connell or Spencer Rattler or whoever's playing on. I don't even. There's so many games before Sunday. I'm like, who's even playing?
I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one. You guys taking the Seahawks or the Bears?
I'm taking the Seahawks, too,
Seattle.
Unfortunately, for the Bears, who've lost, 9 straight for the Bears? This
started out hot, and it is.
4-2 to
Not good.
4-12.
Yep.
Not good at all.
All right, let's look at the Saturday slate of games.
3 of them.
We're talking Chargers and Patriots Field. I actually think that this is a really great transition into what you were just talking about. We got a couple of streaming options at the quarterback spot with both Herbert and Drake May in this one. Would you, if you had Jalen Hurts, would you play Drake May or would you continue to hold out hope?
So I'm going to continue to hold out hope. This is the 1 p.m. game on Saturdays. Let's just talk through the injury status for Jalen Hurts throughout the week. He could return to a full practice today, and they could say, hey, he's going to be fine for Sunday. Let's assume there's ambiguity on this, though, just because that's the trickier situation for a fantasy manager. Friday, the game status report will be out. It'll be, whatever, questionable, off the injury report, doubtful, out, whatever.
Right.
But if he's questionable, he has until Sunday morning to clear concussion protocol. Like, there's nothing that prevents Jalen Hurts from clearing at, Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and playing. So I think that if we have a suggestion by Friday afternoon that he's unlikely to play, then I think Drake May is on the radar. And I think you guys know how highly I think of Drake May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This guy's got the goods. Tough matchup on Saturday. Tough one, right? This Chargers team is really, really, that's a legit defense that I'd want to buy myself even more time and have a Sunday option instead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say the Chargers, we'll get into this in a second, they've slipped a little bit lately against quarterbacks. However, I'm with you. I mean, I just looked ahead at the whole slate of Saturday, and I'm like, I'm not starting any of these guys over Hurts. Again, you have to have a horrific Sunday option as a backup plan for Hurts.
Yep.
And where was I going with this? Horrific backup plan for Hurts and not know, just not know with him.
Yeah.
So for me to maybe pivot elsewhere or maybe feel pessimistic, like if there's a pessimistic report on Hurts, he's probably not playing.
DNP,
Yeah, maybe
and
then, but it would take a lot. Even like Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, obviously, if you happen to have him, what are the odds of that? Probably slim. Kyler Murray's the only guy I think where you're maybe thinking about it if it's DNP.
Sure.
But I don't, certainly not Herbert or May.
I like
Counterpoint.
Go ahead.
If we get if Hurts is ruled out on Friday, I would classify Drake May as a solid streaming option. Like if you know you're not going to have Jalen Hurts, I could certainly make the case for Drake May. It's not, I think there are other options that might represent more upside. Whether those guys are available or not is a different question. So if you are pressed, and we'll obviously have more information on that, by tomorrow's show. But yeah, I think like Drake May is a solid streaming option. One thing that we did see from Drake May last week that the Patriots, when I say literally hadn't done, I mean literally had not done. Drake May had designed rushing yards last week, guys. Drake
May,
running
a lot, yeah.
But last week was the first yards all season that Drake May had as a designed rusher. He had 0 yards on designed runs until last Sunday.
That's crazy.
So I'm not expecting this to become Lamar Jackson in terms of that rushing utilization Saturday. But if we get 3 designed runs from Drake May, that could be an extra 2.5, 3 fantasy points.
By the way, I have Herbert 10, May 19. So are you, do you have May ahead of Herbert?
No, I have Herbert ahead of May.
Okay,
sure.
all right, yeah. So I think the answer here is I'm more likely to stream Herbert if I need one this week. I think neither are ideal. Herbert just doesn't have a high ceiling. I mean, he was QB8 last week, but outside the top 15 the prior 3 weeks. His best weekly finish is 7th this season, but the same kind of applies to May. Check this out. 7 straight weeks, he has finished between QB 11 and 19. He has been right in that mid-range QB2 range for a while. He's 4th in rushing yards since he took over as the starter among quarterbacks, but he's also 5th in interceptions, so he's lost you a lot of points there so far. But I did mention the Chargers good against quarterbacks for the most part this year, but they've allowed 4 quarterbacks to 21 fantasy points all since week 11. So they're trending the wrong way. Again, I think you're right. If Hurts is ruled out, they might be 2 of your best options, but Herbert's certainly the preferred of the 2.
I would agree.
When you look at the backfield here, I know that J.K. Dobbins had his practice window open up. With that window opening up, it gives you that 21-day window, right, to be able to bring a guy back. Are we assuming that there's a chance he's going to play this week?
I think he's got a chance to play on Saturday. Now, that might not be a good thing for fantasy, right? Because if you're somebody who wants to ride the Gus Edwards hot hand from last week, you're saying to yourself, I don't want J.K. Dobbins on the field. If J.K. is active, I would not play any of them. Now, if he's not active, I would consider Gus Edwards a usable option in Week 17. He, last week, was much more involved than he had been. Yes, there are still some limitations, right? Still got to punch it into the end zone. Might have to do it twice. That being said, he's more usable than I believe. Gus Edwards without J.K. Dobbins is more usable than J.K. Dobbins if active. That's my opinion.
You think so? Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd feel better having Dobbins in my lineup over Edwards. I don't trust Edwards. I mean, he had... so he had
14
16,
for 68.
Yeah, he totaled 16 fantasy points in the first 3 games without Dobbins, and then had the 2 touchdown game. He's not going to get you anything in the passing game. Like you said, he could score a touchdown and still be a bad start.
Yes.
And that's not good. If you're in that
Kareem Hunt
situation,
style, right?
That's really bad. So you probably need 2. You got that last week. But the guy in the 4 games without Dobbins, he has full receiving yards total. I mean, it's brutal. It is a good matchup against New England. I'll give you that. But I think, by the way, I do agree with you that if Dobbins comes back, he's still a very risky play because it could be like early season this year, and Edwards plays a lot, and it's still a rotation, maybe a little Vidal. Haskins scored a touchdown last week. So I'd be nervous about it, but I think I'd feel better about Dobbins than having to go into my championship with Edwards in my lineup, even without Dobbins. That would scare me.
I just don't feel, and color me more on Mike's side with this one, Gus Edwards just does not really inspire confidence from me in a win or go home. It's your championship week. Yeah. I recognize everything you're saying, too, about J.K. Dobbins. Ideally, you just have better options than either of these Chargers running backs if you can help it and just have a clearer path to your backfield.
I would agree on that for sure. In the championship finals, some of the names that we're going to discuss today, you probably wouldn't hear us discuss on a normal Thursday. It's just that we've got this unique Saturday slate, so we're giving them a bit more attention. But in a perfect world, I have no Chargers running back in my lineup in the finals.
How about last week, Kayshon Boutte set a career high in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, and he found the end zone, good enough for 20.5 fantasy points. Field.
Yeah.
How desperate do you need to be to start Kayshon Boutte?
This would be 16-team, 2 flex.
Okay, there we go. There you go.
Yeah. I really don't know what the Patriots have here in terms of what kind of prospect this is. This was a guy who, coming into his final year at LSU, was the next great one amongst the LSU wide receivers. Didn't have a great season, goes in the 6th round, has some maturity issues, in and out of the lineup last year, in the lineup a ton this year, but just really never put it together. You can find a better option.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
He's played 90% of the snaps since week 6. He's hit 10 fantasy points twice. It was last week, and then the other game he scored a touchdown. Nah.
Okay.
No, thanks.
Is there a tight end who's risky this week, who's out? Is there anybody who I'm trying to think of injury-wise?
There's Njoku is
out.
Njoku's a good one. Yep.
Dicey. I feel like there's one more.
Am I forgetting somebody? All right. Well, if I'm forgetting somebody that might be dicey, and you get into a late situation where Friday afternoon your tight end is ruled out, sneaky Austin Hooper. Hasn't been a ton, but you know what? Guys played well of late. Touchdown potential there. Just file that one away.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you get a
long shot.
I think you get aim higher than Hooper.
Aim higher?
Tight end. I mean, we're barely you trust Hunter Henry's.
Oh, totally. I know, but I'm just saying if you're damn, I'm looking at the waiver options and you're there's nobody there, you could do worse.
Okay. I like it.
Sneaky one. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Broncos and Bengals. Guys, is the Broncos backfield the same thing that we just said with the Chargers backfield, except without the injuries?
Yeah. I would agree that I would say it's worse, because you can't.
Jaleel McLaughlin could be back.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he's limited to practice. He may be. That makes it even worse.
Yeah. Tyler Bidet could be back.
Yeah. Blake Watson added to the active
Blake
roster.
Watson, yep. Michael Burton might catch a touchdown. Audric Estime, avoid.
Yeah, this is gross. Even last week without, so Jaleel McLaughlin was out, right? We thought, okay, well, at least it'll just be 2 guys getting the workload. They're nah. Blake Watson, 4 carries, 2 targets, played 10 snaps. So, no thanks. None were top 20 options. And by the way, Javonte Williams in that game scored 12.3 fantasy points. That was his 4th most in a game this season. What
a weird year.
No, thank you.
I am checking something right now that I think is important, and it looks good right now. Okay. I'm saying this now to begin this game, not begin, but as we get into this game more. Early in the week, there seemed to be some potential threats of pretty nasty rain during this one.
Yep.
According to my weather app, and I'm no Ginger Z over here, but Paycor Stadium on Saturday looks clear during the game.
That
right?
looks pretty clear. I don't know what that one line is there.
That's late rain at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So as of right now, it's showing no rain. This is a 4:30 kick, so call it 4:30 to 7:45 for this game. Looks to be in the clear, but just monitor this one. It'd be really hard to bench a couple of the guys in this game because they've been so good. Jamar Chase, I'm talking about you.
Yeah.
That being said, we've seen games recently been impacted dramatically, right? L.A. against San Francisco a couple weeks ago. We've seen some gnarly rain at times. It is that time of the year. But that's kind of the only thing that influences my decision-making on the Bengals.
Well, wind. I know there's a chance of wind in that one, too, so I'd keep an eye on that. I don't know what it says about that, but if you're steady 20 miles an hour with gusts of 30 to 40, then you're uh-oh. But
we're in pretty good shape. 4 to 10, gusts up to 26, but a lot of that looks early in the day.
Okay, good. Yep. All right. So, look, even if it's windy, you're going to be hard pressed to bench Burrow, Chase, and Higgins anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, the wind is the main issue with passing games.
With the amount that Joe Burrow is throwing the football, do you think that you could throw a dart on Andre Iosivas?
No.
In this one?
I'd be out. Yeah, I'd be out.
Okay.
Nope.
Just a little too far down that list.
His last 12 games, he's hit 9 fantasy points 2 times.
Not good.
No
Yeah.
thanks.
All right.
9, not 19, 9.
9. And keep in mind, T. Higgins has missed substantial action, and he's still not been in a fantasy option. So no, you'll get the fluke touchdowns here or there. You know what's funny on FF now? Princeton came up a few times, and I was like, it almost came out of my mouth. Well, I guess Osivas is scoring a touchdown today, and I'm kicking myself because sure enough, he scored one. That's one of them. One of them are live TV regrets.
Is there a quarterback? I mean, and I know that we just talked about this with Lamar Jackson. Like Josh Allen, up until last week was great. Like, is there a quarterback that is more on fire from a passing game perspective than Joe Burrow throughout the last 6, 7, 8 weeks?
I'm gonna screw this stat up, but I'm just gonna say it confidently enough that I don't sound like I'm screwing up. Joe Burrow apparently is currently on the longest consecutive game streak in NFL history of 250 or more passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Like, the guy's been on fire. Let me see if I can look at his game.
Yeah, it's like, does he have 3+ and 5 straight or
7
something?
straight games for 3+ passing touchdowns.
Yeah, with I think 250.
3+ and 7 straight. It's good. Good thing you owe my sheet here.
Yes,
I
that's
have
right.
it. I have it written here, and I still just guessed on it out loud.
Yeah, how's that? So Daniel said 7 straight games with 3 or more passing touchdowns. Oh, by the way, also 251 or more yards in all of those games as well.
That's unbelievable.
7 straight games.
That's unbelievable.
So even against the Denver defense that has been at times very good this year, have you seen the practice report for Riley Moss for Saturday? Is he back in action?
I'm not sure if he's coming back. He's been out for a while though, and you know the options behind him aren't great right now, but they're working in some youngsters there.
I just mentioned that. It has not worked out. Do you think there's a shadow on Saturday?
Yes, I think. Well, you know what? This is a tricky one. I ended up projecting. Yes, exactly. I ended up projecting Surtain to follow Chase. I think there's times where they're going to spread out in the formation, and you're going to see, and he's going to be on Higgins. It's going to happen sometimes. But Chase is also in the slot a third of the time, and on those plays he might be on, or almost definitely will be on Higgins. So it's not a major concern for Chase. You know, maybe you drop the ceiling for him a little bit, especially if it is a little windy. We'll see how that ends up by game time. You're still using Chase, but I do think Surtain will be on him quite a bit.
Riley Moss, full practice on Tuesday and Wednesday.
There you go. Thank you. So probably going to play on Saturday based off of those practice reports there. Bo Nix in a pretty good spot here as well. As we know, the Bengals have really struggled this season to stop anybody in the passing game.
Mm-hmm. Love Bo Nix. And the last couple games, he's had, I think, over 23 passing
solid
yards back-to-back. You know, not as high of a rushing total as you want, but if you can give me a couple fantasy points with your legs, I'm always going to take it. Let's talk Cardinals and the Rams. James Conner was limited on both Tuesday and Wednesday's practice reports, obviously dealing with that knee injury that we mentioned earlier on Monday.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense in this one, or are we kind of continuing to wait here?
I'll just say this. Not a guarantee, but good signs. I mean, obviously the fact that he's practiced both days. At the beginning of the week, Jonathan Gannon, their head coach, ruled out both their starting offensive tackles. Say, hey, these guys are not going to play. As a matter of fact, both of them are now on IR, and a reporter followed, how about James Conner? He said, well, there's a reason why I didn't rule him out, because he has a chance to play on Saturday. Okay. So there's a chance he plays. There's a chance Trey Benson plays.
Yep.
Gannon did follow up, and this might have been a bit of gamesmanship, saying, hey, if he doesn't play, if those guys don't play, then we'll see a lot of Michael Carter. We'll have a game status report today for Arizona. They have to fly to L.A. tomorrow, so if Conner doesn't travel, they have to announce that and have to rule him out tomorrow. But seems like, you know, maybe this is 50-50, or at least maybe at least 50-50.
That's an NFL rule, by the way. Like when you're flying out, you've got to rule a guy out.
If a guy doesn't fly, you either have to announce he's flying by himself or that he's not going to play.
Interesting.
Yep.
Got it.
So I think the attack here is Conner. If Conner is active, pretty straightforward. You're playing him. You're avoiding everyone else. If he's out, but Trey Benson plays, I think he's your preferred option. A little risky coming off the missed time, and I think they'll work in some other guys, but he'll be a viable flex option here against the Rams, kind of a neutral matchup against this. But if they're both out, it becomes the Michael Carter show. Last week after James Conner left, and again, Benson was out for this game, 21 snaps for Michael Carter, just 8 for DJ Dallas. Dallas hasn't had more than 4 touches in a game since week 17 of 2022. So Carter is the guy they will lean heavily on, and the words from Gannon suggest that would be the case. So not the worst guy to throw on the end of your bench right now, because if they're both out and it's Carter and you're like, I need a flex option, he could be a 20-touch guy in this game. He very well could. So just something to consider there.
When I look at this, so let's say that ideally you're gonna have clarity heading into this game from the running back position. I don't think there is. I can use the word clarity around Marvin Harrison Jr. because he's going to be out there. He's going to be playing snaps.
He'll be on the field, indeed.
Right, but I have no idea what to expect from Marvin Harrison Jr. 4 of his last 5 games, he's been under 9 fantasy points. What do you do at this point, Mike Clay? How are you projecting him here in this one? Because he seems like one of the biggest dart throws at the wide receiver spot.
Very boom bust. Wide receiver 36 for me. Maybe the lowest he's been all year. It's just going the wrong way. Look, he's been under 9 fantasy points in 9 of 15 games this season as well, not just the last 3. I mean, it's been a constant trend this year. The recent 3 games you just talked about does have 22 targets during that span, but didn't get to 50 yards. In any of those games, he leads the NFL in end zone targets, has sole possession of that, but he has a 52% catch rate overall this year. The efficiency is not there. It's been addressed by Kyler Murray. They know that connection is not working right now. The Rams do allow a ton of touchdowns to receivers. They're top 5 in that. Maybe that's your saving grace if you start him. Maybe he puts up 50, 60 yards, scores a touchdown, but very boom-bust season, very disappointing in that regard, but I wouldn't say lineup block. I mean, he's a flex.
No. I think that, not to cop out here, I think you got to follow whatever plan got you here, right? Because, like, if you've made it to the finals, you figured it out with Marvin Harrison Jr. Either he's been demoted because you picked up, and I'm just going to make this, maybe you grabbed Khalil Shakir or drafted him early in the season. You're just like, I'm riding the Khalil Shakir, even coming off of a bad game train.
Yep.
Or you found somebody off the waiver wire. Or, hey, you know what? Maybe you have Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're so damn good at running back that you just stick by Marv and you hope that you have Lamar and good running backs and he gets you 12 fantasy points. I would follow the cadence that you have followed that got you to this point.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel good. There's a handful of guys that I can't believe that in this Week 17 matchup. Now I can believe it because I played an entire season with Marv on my roster. But starting at the beginning of the year, it's like, man, I'd rather have Adam Thielen. I'd rather play Adam Thielen right now than Marvin Harrison Jr. I would potentially consider Jalen McMillan even with how he's playing in that game.
Red hot.
Yeah. This is just not what we expected from Harrison this year. We just thought he'd be just a consistently featured, heavily targeted player, kind of like Malik Neighbors, but with better quarterback play, and we did not get it.
They need to do that. I mean, they don't have a choice. They have to next year be much more Marv-focused in this game. It's Cardinals time, so we are touchdown for Trey McBride. Please.
It was supposed to happen last week. Kyler promised us it was going to happen last week, and then it didn't happen.
Well, he had an end zone target, and he threw it into the stands, basically. I mean, he almost threw it through the goalpost.
There's just no way. There's just no way, right?
Even with
they're
last
eliminated,
week,
so they're just going to throw every pass to him near the goal line. They'll get him one.
And he's a lineup block, regardless. I mean, even
definitely.
With the way that Trey McBride is playing, like he's absolutely a lineup block.
What did we say? He is. I tweeted this. He has exactly 200 fantasy points, 200.0, and 0 touchdown catches, which is just wild.
He has that one touchdown run. I think there are some people just to put a pin in the James Conner thing, just because you mentioned the fact that they're eliminated. I get it, they're eliminated, but like, it's a guy who's never played a full season in his career. Like, I don't get the sense that James Conner is the kind of guy who, the minute they become eliminated, says, "All right, never mind, I'm good."
Yeah, pack it in.
They'll be smart if he's gonna be impacted negatively by playing, then they won't play him, right? But like, if he can play, maybe he's, it's like 65-35 he can play, he's going to play. That's my sense on it.
And by the way, this is why I just use blanket injury rates for the most part. Like, James Conner is probably the guy at running back where you're most likely to deduct like a game from him compared to everyone else, because he always, and still, like, at worst, he's questionable for week 17. Like, he's made it the whole way. It's just the only guys I think we got to really worry about are guys that are actually hurt in the offseason going into the year. Those are the guys we got to worry about. Everyone else, it's just not it's the same. It's not that it's not an issue. It's just the same, a blanket for everyone.
You know what would have been a good?
It's so unpredictable.
Yeah, it totally is. Here's a good either or. Marvin Harrison Jr. or Cooper Kupp this weekend?
A Kupp. I'm going to go Kupp. I know.
Same here.
I know.
Same. Yeah. But it's the last 4 games have made you at least think about it, right?
Yeah, I'm looking here.
4.7 fantasy points, 20.2 fantasy points.
Yeah, that was really good.
Then a goose egg, and then 5.4. So 3 games under 5.5 fantasy points out of the last 4.
Yeah. And look at the matchup. Fine.
The matchup's fine. Arizona's mid-pack, but they are shutting down the perimeter. They've been quietly very good against the perimeter. They're mid-pack against the slot. So in theory, it's a better matchup for him. Yeah, I mean, the major issue I've seen the last 2 weeks watching them play is that he's just not seemingly a priority.
Yeah, it's
like
Koopa.
he has a 13% target share in his last year.
Nakua, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was 30% before that. Now
Koopa
it's
Nakua, yeah.
13%. So yeah, it's been rough. But you're comparing to Harrison, who has also not been very good lately.
Yeah.
Harrison's 42nd in fantasy points per game this year at receiver among qualified receivers. Cup is 16th at least, so he's been a lot better. But I mean, if I had him in my lineup going into the week, I'd be a little nervous. Do we get 3 straight duds? But there's also the chance he catches 10 passes because
of course
he can do that.
Yep, he sure can. Yeah, but so
3 targets. I mean, 3 targets apiece in 2 straight games is the part that makes me nervous.
Yeah, one game you're like, all right, fluke. They
just
double,
bad weather, right?
bracket coverage.
Yeah.
The 2 in a row, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah. I'd have a hard time benching him still.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I'm at 29, so not.
Given the
Still lineup block.
Given the fact that it's just 3 games, you want to just quickly pick Chargers, Patriots? I'll take the Chargers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chargers, yeah.
I'll take the Chargers as well.
Although, I got to say, we haven't been around since this weekend. Patriots hung in there with the Bills.
I owned up to it on Monday, and I'll own up to it again here. Like, just all-time bad call by me. 21 points?
I knew, it's just them divisional games. The big spreads in divisional games always make me nervous, and I just thought New England was going to battle. And plus, you're on Drake May. You had to think, he's been playing well. You're like, he's going to, at least, it's not like just an embarrassing quarterback situation.
He's a stud. No, he's a total stud.
They should have won that game. They just folded.
So we're all in the Chargers. Broncos, Bengals?
I'm going to take the Bengals. Yeah, I think they keep it. They could still make the playoffs, which, by the way,
they need some help.
I hope they do. They need a lot of help. But I want them to get in because that would be so fun to watch.
Can you imagine Buffalo, Cincinnati in round 1?
Oh, my. Great. That'd be must-see TV.
I'm taking Denver.
Okay.
Plus 145 on ESPN bet for what it's worth.
What was it? Jeff Saturday made some comments about, Bengals have to get in. No one wants to watch Bo Nix and the Broncos and stuff. And the Broncos deserve it for sure, but in terms of just entertaining TV, he's right. I mean, watch
Joe Burrow is must-see by himself. Last one would be
Rams. I'm taking the Rams over the
Rams
Cardinals.
too. Yeah,
I'll take the Rams.
Yeah. The Rams would get a big boost tonight if the Bears find a way to upset the Seahawks. But that being said, Rams need to win either way. So, I'll take the Rams as well.
Yeah.
Good show.
Love it. Hey, good hanging out with you guys. Appreciate you taking some time out of your busy Thursday. It's Thursday, Mike Clay, just so you remember for the rest of the day.
I'm so confused.
Today's show is presented by Wingstop. Come back and join us tomorrow for part 2 of our Week 17 preview. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. We'll see you guys on Friday.